Welcome back, my loves, to another episode of the Energy Expansion Podcast. There are always so many things that I want to say and I want to share, but this is a special day because once a month I do a live studio audience recording for the women inside of Energy Expansion Academy. I want this conversation to be really relevant for the women who are here with me in real time. And when we're done, we're going to have an after hours conversation. So ladies, get excited. But today we're going to be talking about something really simple and also really wildly powerful. We are going to be talking about the concept of inspiration. Inspiration. So as you hear that, I want you to notice what comes up for you. For me, I get a big smile on my face because who doesn't love feeling inspired, right? And I feel like this is a word that we can toss around quite a bit. And also, it's a really sacred concept, and it's a deeply spiritual concept as well. So I have some notes here. I'm going to share some of these pieces with you. I love looking at words, and I think it's called the etymology, the origin of words and the true meaning of words and where they came from. I love geeking out about that. It's always really mind-blowing when you understand the depth of some of our favorite words or words that we throw around regularly. They take on a life of their own. One of the dictionary definitions of inspiration is the process of being mentally stimulated to do something, especially when it comes to an act of creativity. That is what it is. And that's also a little like, meh. I don't always love the dictionary definition of things. But when we look at the etymology, it comes from pieces of Latin words, and it literally means to breathe. Inspiration means to breathe. It means to blow life into something. I have full body chills. And it also, like the inspiration, right? Spirit is in there. It's also connected to spirit and soul. So we are breathing life into spirit, and from spirit, spirit is breathing life into us. And so I'm so curious if any of you knew about that. I remember hearing that a while ago, and having not known that and then heard that, it was like, oh my gosh, of course, when we feel lit up and inspired, it's because we're connected to something greater. Something is being poured into us from the most powerful creative force known to man, whether you call it God, spirit, universe, whatever it is. And then often when we're inspired, what we're doing is we're taking that and then we're creating something out of it as well. So powerful. So to breathe into, to create something from a place of spirit, from a place of soul. That is the root of the word inspiration. Inspiration. The women who are live, I'm seeing nods and smiles and some note taking. I love this. You're all after my own heart. I'm a note taker. So inspiration is the life force moving through you. And although it's the life force, it's not actually something that we need to force. So it's the life force energy. It's the natural flow. It's what happens when we are connected to a place of alignment. And at the same time, it's something that we receive. It's something that we get to be filled up with and something that we are activated by. So I just love all of this so much because we're going to circle back to some of this. I'm going to get emotional. Some of what I want to share with you as we're having this conversation are things that I have been feeling inspired by lately. And a few things I want to talk about is, how does inspiration move through us? I want you to take a moment to think about that. When do you feel most inspired? If you don't know, and you're wanting to activate inspiration, I want to give you some tips, some tricks, and some things to try. So a lot of times, inspiration comes through in moments of stillness. When we cut out the noise around us, or even our own internal dialogue, It creates spaciousness for a new listening. It creates a place for spirit to come through, to land within us. So getting still and getting quiet is a really great way to activate inspiration. A place of surrender versus like the visual here, I'm using my fists, like there's like tight gripping, pushing, forcing, kind of slashing through. And sometimes that energy, I think there are moments where that energy is helpful, but most of the time, we're not going to want to move through life that way. It's actually really dysregulating and not helpful for our nervous system. So in moments of surrender, in moments of trust, and also in unexpected moments, I love this for us because how many times I know that I shouldn't do this and then I do this. There will be days when I put a lot of pressure on myself and I'll be behind my computer and I'm like, okay, create, get inspired. That doesn't normally work. Like 99.9% of the time, that is the worst way to try to create inspiration. What actually happens is when you step away and you go for a walk, is when you get outside. Again, get still. Notice your surroundings. Go do something fun. I can't tell you how many little micro life lessons happen when I'm just being a mom, doing something with my kids, or being silly with my friends, and something will happen. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to grab my phone and I want to go live, or I want to go on my Instagram stories because I just had this real life aha moment. Inspiration happens when you give yourself permission to live your life. To live your life in the most aligned ways. Also, I think inspiration can happen in really uncomfortable times, right? When something happens, you're like, ooh, I did not like that. What can I do differently to make sure that that doesn't happen? And then the way that I'm designed is when I learn a lesson, I'm like, I need to share this with as many people as possible so that they don't have to experience, like if I can stop someone else from experiencing this, I would love to do that. Let me share this. I'm inspired to share this. So it happens from everyday moments. I also feel like when we are intentionally connecting to ourselves, connecting to others, but really what I'm referring to here is connecting to spirit. There's this daily devotional that I use that I love that so many of my clients have purchased and so many people in my online community have purchased and they'll share about it. And I'll open that up and a few sentences I'll read and I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, this is so spot on, right? So in my desire and in my intentions to connect with God, I find inspiration there. Also, oracle cards, angel cards, tarot cards, anything that allows you to feel connected to something bigger. How many times have you been maybe in a little bit of a funk or desiring inspiration and you go to one of your decks and a card flies out and you're like, I cannot make this up. Like how perfect this is. And that's inspiration for you. And again, it can be inspiration for others. Music is inspiration, meditation, moving your body. So I'm really curious when you feel most inspired. There's something I want to share with you. It's rooted in science. I don't know all the sciencey details about it, but I do know it's really powerful. Most people get their ahas. I'm curious if you're this way because it's true for me. There's something about being in the shower, being near a body of water, exercising, and or being in your car, like driving. There's something about those four things. It's interesting that two of those four things have to do with water, being in a shower or a body of water. Fun fact, I have something called Aqua Notes. It's a waterproof notebook and it comes with a pencil. So I've literally created entire programs like Energy Expansion Academy. I don't think anybody knows this, was created in the shower one day. And so if you get your best ideas in the shower, my friends, get yourself Aqua Notes. It's like the best $10. I'll link it in the show notes. It's the best $10 you could ever spend. And there's a saying, it's like, don't let your next good idea go down the drain. And it's so fun, so silly. I'm getting some laughter here. Yeah, but real talk. So 50% of this has to do with water. I think there's something that has to happen, some association to the natural flow, right? Inspiration is not force, it's flow. The same way water flows in all kinds of different ways. And I think also shower, the way that a body of water typically moves when we move our body and when we're in our car, there's a natural rhythm, right? Like each of those have a slightly different rhythm, but there's a rhythm to that. And what ends up happening is when we are in some sort of a rhythm or a flow, the way that I understand it is it almost opens up certain parts of our brain that are not as active as we're moving through our day and putting out proverbial fires or moving through our to-do list. When we let ourselves get in the flow, there's a new way of thinking. There's new connections that our mind is able to make and a spaciousness, like I had said before, for spirit to come through, for us to hear things in a way that maybe we wouldn't otherwise hear when we're doing other things throughout our day. So there's that. Now, I want to share some of what has been inspiring me a lot lately. And there's honestly probably so many other things I want to share, like 10 things. I only have a handful of things that I wrote down last night when this came through really strongly. And hopefully, as I'm speaking to you today, a few more things will drop in. But one thing that I'm really inspired by, I feel like so many podcast episodes have been inspired by something that I just recently did, right? Like I shared a podcast episode about the religious education conference that I went to, and I was so inspired. I did the Q1 recap, which was really fun, where I really looked at, okay, what were all of the things that I experienced over the first 3 months of this year? The most recent podcast episode was the plant medicine ceremony. And everybody really likes those particular podcast episodes. So I think you're going to like this one a lot. But over the weekend, my daughters and I and some of our friends went to a Forrest Frank concert. You guys, if you don't know the artist Forrest Frank, you are missing out. I want you to don't stop the podcast episode yet. Listen to its entirety. But as soon as it's done, I want you to pull up wherever you listen to music and I want you to go find Forrest Frank. It's fun. It's so upbeat. It's Christian music, but it's not like, I don't know. I like church songs, but some of the church songs, especially the ones I grew up with, they're a little stale. Where when you listen to Forrest Frank, my husband's not really into worship music, but he'll listen and beep and bop and sing. And I don't think he realizes what he's listening to because it feels like fun pop music. So it's fun music to listen to with your kiddos. So we'd been waiting for this concert. We go to this concert. I knew we were going to love it. And there were so many things I was inspired by. The first thing is, I don't know how he did this. I'm going to analyze this and see if I can break it down and figure it out. But there were 8,000 people at this concert. It felt like there were 8,000 of us sitting in his living room with him. There was a sense of connection and intimacy that was created through how he showed up, through how he let spirit move through him. There was a way that he was interacting where we were. It was like one of the venues where no seat was a bad seat. Like every seat was a good seat, but we were way up there. Like we weren't able to high five him when he was walking through the crowd or anything like that. But I still felt like I was right there with him. That is a talent, my friends. He would bring up people on stage, mostly kids, and let them sing with him and taking selfies. So there's like 8,000 people. He's here to perform, but he had this magical ability to connect with every single person. I found that so incredibly inspiring. And he said something. One other thing that was really cool. I've been to a lot of concerts in my lifetime. And I think there's similarities between a lot of performers and in different genres of music. He did something that was really special. He pulled out his laptop and he had them project it on the big screen, like how you would do a screen share, right? Like on Zoom on your own computer. But he screen shared with the big projector on stage for all 8,000 people to see. And he brought up the program that he uses to make music. So he's a very talented singer. But he started with producing music when he was a kid. He got a program. And so he literally showed us in real time the behind the scenes of how he makes his art. And it was the coolest thing in the world. And it just got me thinking, how can we as heart-centered entrepreneurs And business owners and creators bring people even more behind the scenes. It was so incredible. And one other thing that happened was, you may or may not be familiar with this artist, but he was not always a Christian singer. He's been a Christian person. He grew up with that spiritual background, but he was the lead singer of a really cool band called Surfaces. Me and my family used to listen to this band back in the day. And it wasn't until a couple of months ago, we were listening to one of his songs, his Forrest Frank songs, and my 9-year-old daughter goes, "Mom, isn't Forrest Frank the guy from Surfaces?" And I'm like, "No." I Googled it. Sure enough, she recognized his voice. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because at the concert, he was talking about singing the music that he did before felt good, but it didn't feel aligned. And he felt like God was calling him to take a step back, and he didn't know why, but he listened. He was getting all of these amazing opportunities, people wanting to throw money at him to show up at these different places and spaces. And he kept saying no, and he didn't know why. He felt like, am I crazy for turning down these opportunities? But he just felt so strongly that God was telling him to stay quiet. Cue the moment of stillness. And so what was happening was, in the stillness, he started figuring out ways to weave in this sort of like pop sound with Christian music, which he had never seen done ever before. And so he was like, I don't know if this will work. How many of you have ever got an idea? I know I have, where I thought, sounds kind of cool, but is anybody going to want it? I don't know, but I'm inspired, so I create it and I put it out there. And more often than not, it goes pretty well. It does pretty well when you listen to spirit breathing through you. And so he goes on to tell this story about how he creates this song, he puts it out there, and to his surprise, it takes off like wildfire. The results that came from this, from just listening to spirit, what he calls God, was bigger than anything he could have imagined. So he did it again, and it happened again, and he did it again, and it happened again. And the most incredible part of this is he's sitting there, 8,000 people in the room, a sold out tour, not a single ticket left for any of the arenas or shows he's going to play at. And you know what he says? He goes, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what this is, and I don't know what this is going to be, but God's telling me to create this, to say this, to go here, to go there, and I'm listening. And I felt so inspired by his radical honesty, ridiculous amounts of success. And he literally is throwing his hands up and he's like, I have no idea. I have no idea what's happening, why it's working. I'm just going to trust it. And the last thing before we move on to the next person, these are all people I'm really inspired by. He goes, I'm creating things and God is breathing on them. I'm creating these things and God is breathing on them. I got full body chills right now. That is the definition of true inspiration, right? To breathe into. Spirit breathes into us, and then we breathe life into that idea. And the other thought, I actually had this thought this morning, because when he said that, I was like, okay. And I went home and I journaled and I said, God, I want you to breathe on all of my creations. I want God's breath on everything I do. And then I woke up this morning, and I don't know if this will make sense. It's going to sound silly when it comes out, but you're going to get it. What I heard was, if you want God to breathe life into you and your creations, you need to breathe your breath into God. And so this morning, I was like, okay, what is that going to look like? And it looked like putting on worship music. Normally, I'll watch trainings in the morning, like I'll get caught up on courses that I'm in, or I'll listen to podcast episodes, or I'll bring up something inspiring on YouTube, and I'll put my headphones in actually, because I don't know if my husband or my kids want to listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza, right? They're doing their thing. This morning, I did not put my headphones in. I put on some worship music. I turned the volume all the way up, and I let the whole house hear the music. And I also sang really loud. So they heard the music and they heard my voice. And that was me recognizing, okay, we're going to do this together, God. you're going to breathe life onto me, and I am going to use my breath to honor you. And this is going to be this really beautiful, symbiotic, synchronistic relationship that we have. And I think that that already exists for me and probably for you, but I just, for the first time in my entire life, had that realization of what was happening. So I wanted to share that with you. The next person, I am going to send her this episode. I met this woman at the Energetics of Business. That was one of the other recent recaps I did. I forgot about that earlier when I was mentioning that, but the Energetics of Business event, funny enough, I was up on stage doing my Holy Shift, a catalyst for transformation talk. And I was staring at this woman in the back of the room looking so fly, so beautiful, so stunning. And she was giving me snaps and things like that. And as soon as I was done, it was her turn to get up on stage. This woman's name is Shannon Woodson, and she was amazing. Let's get her tagged in the show notes. Go give her a follow. The thing that inspired, first of all, I loved her talk. I was very inspired by her talk, but that's not what I'm going to share here. I want to share the way that she got herself set up. So what I mean by that was, when I walked off the stage and then she was walking on the stage, she had some requests. There was a little sofa. She wanted the sofa pushed up so she could sit down on it versus standing up like everyone else did. She wanted the mic set up a certain way. She wanted to have a book propped up. So she sits down and I'm not going to say it because I'm trying, I want everyone to be able to listen to this. I don't know if you're going to want your kids to listen to this part, but she said, not apologetically, laughing into the microphone, she goes, I'm a needy bitch. Bish. That's what she said. And I started laughing. And what's interesting is she was not the one who pulled the sofa up. She was not the one fiddling with the microphone. She had someone else put the sofa up and then she sat down and she was a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, a little bit up, a little bit down. So she was asking for what she needed and her needs were being met. I want the book here. I want this here. And I remember thinking, I want to be a needy bitch. I was blown away. You could, without apology, without, I don't even know what to call it. You can just she didn't even ask for what she wanted. She just said what she wanted. And she wasn't a brat about it. She wasn't a bitch about it. And I had never seen a woman be a stand for herself in a way on a stage in front of a bunch of people. And oh my gosh, I have full body chills. She didn't even have to give her talk. Her talk was incredible. But just watching a woman say what she wanted, know that she's allowed to have needs and expect that those needs be met. It wasn't anything astronomical, but the way that I am programmed is it would be oh, no, it's okay. I don't need that, or I want that, but let me do that for myself. Let me, in my animal print high heels, let me lug the sofa up and let me fiddle with the microphone that I actually had no business fiddling with because I don't know how it works. That's how I would be up until that point. So Shannon, I did go up to her afterwards and I gave her a hug and I said, I am so inspired. I want to be a needy bitch. I didn't even know that I was allowed to do that or to want that or to, it wasn't even my realm of possibility. So I've been thinking about that a lot. So I want every single one of you to be a needy bish as well. Okay. The other thing I want to say is when I went up to her vibe, I love my vibe. I think my energy is chef's kiss. And so is hers in a completely different way than me. And what I saw in her, and I shared all of this with her, I saw a lot in her that I feel like I want to be, that I wish I was, that I'm too afraid to be. I said, thank you for that. Thank you for illuminating that. And it's not in a self-deprecating way. It's not she's better than me or I'm not enough. It's who she is opened up my eyes to what's actually possible. And it reminded me of a saying that I want to share with you. So it's actually the opposite of self-deprecating and actually really exciting and illuminating, because what I believe to be true is if you spot it, you got it, babe. What does that mean? When you see something in someone else, when you spot it, you got it. Let that land. So there's an idea, something known as shadow work. And we could do a whole series, 5-10 episodes on shadow work. But essentially, one aspect of shadow work is when something in someone triggers you, or like you don't like something in someone, 99.9% of the time, my friend, that's actually just acting as a mirror. It's showing you something about you. What you think about others has very little to do with them and everything to do with you. Oh, that feels like a hard truth. I'm literally like holding my heart and holding my belly. Like, I don't like that for us. Also, I didn't make the rules, and that is a spiritual law. Take it up with the big guy upstairs, Sky Mama, Sky Daddy, whatever you want to call it, right? I didn't make the rules, but that's true. Now, the thing, I know we don't love that, but what I do love about this is the flip side of the coin is if you see something in someone else, another woman, that you're inspired by, you see something in another woman and you think, just like I did, I wish I was more like that. There's a way that she shows up in the world that I crave. The only reason that you're able to see that or notice that is because it's already within you. If you spot it, you got it. You wouldn't be able to see it in someone else if you didn't already have that inside of you. So, Shannon, I'm wildly obsessed with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to make sure you get the link to this podcast episode. There's a couple of other people, and I feel like because of the context of the conversation, I don't actually want to share their names on the podcast episode, but there are they're women, 2 women in particular. And there's probably more than that. There's like a whole line of women who fall into this category. But there's 2 women that I've listened to speak in the last, one was earlier this year, and one was actually a year and a half ago. And it just really stands out. Both of these women are huge figures in the coaching industry, in the content creation space. And if I didn't already say it, they're massively, wildly successful in terms of what they've created, the impact, the income, the reach, all of it. And these 2 women, I feel like, told the truth about success. They talked about success in a way that I don't hear anyone else talk about. And what I mean by that is, and I'm not here to scare anybody, but I've been at this for a really long time. 12 years in the coaching industry is a long time, especially because 12 years ago, when someone said, "What do you do?" and you said a life coach, they literally looked at you like you were an alien from outer space, right? Coaching is pretty mainstream now, but that was not the case a decade ago, 12 years ago when I got started. And I was met with a lot of side eyes and glares and words that were hurtful. Like, what the hell is that? What makes you think you can do that? What do you know about life to call yourself a life coach? People who I love to this day and who love me, that was their response to me telling them the journey I was embarking on. And what I get is it was coming from a place of love, right? Like, it doesn't sound very loving, but I think they were worried about me. And again, this takes me back to what other people think about you has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. What you think about other people has very little to do with that person and everything to do with you, right? Goes both ways. And so what I'm seeing now is a lot, and I mean this with love. When I think back on those people who looked at me that way, who said those things to me, those are people who have never had the courage to go after what they really wanted. Those are people who have lived inside the box that they were put in, the lives that their parents wanted for them. And again, there's not a hierarchy here. I'm not saying I'm better than anyone else. I'm just stating what is so. I'm stating the facts. I think there are people who maybe at one point had dreams and then decided it wasn't going to happen for them. They gave up on some level and they settled for the status quo. And so the journey I was going on triggered something within them. Anyways, back to this. The truth about success. I wanted to give you that context. So again, I've been at this for a long time. I feel like there's the sky's the limit. Not even the sky's the limit. There's so much more that I want. There's so much more that I see for myself in terms of who I'm going to reach and what I'm going to do and where I'm going to go and what I'm going to create. And also where I stand today, I'm really freaking proud of myself. When I feel like numbers are just numbers, but when you can go from working at a corporate job, having no desire to be an entrepreneur, to now 2025 will be our 6th or 7th, I need to do the math on that, at least 6, probably 7 years of creating multiple 6 figures each year. That's kind of crazy. When you really stop to think about it, that's crazy to me, like amazing. And so there is a level of success I feel like I've been able to create. And also there are moments when the more I grow, the more scared I get. And I was not prepared for that. No one told me that. I thought when I first got started, once I got to a decade in, once I was making a certain amount of money, once I had so many clients, that I was never going to feel scared again as a business owner. Boy, was I wrong. And it was really, I feel like I carried shame around that. And I'm not like terrified all day, every day, but the growth and the expansion, when you say yes to a journey like this, it doesn't stop. At least it's not going to stop for me, right? And what's required for growth and expansion? You've got to bump up against your own edges, right? You've got to get out of your own comfort zone. It does not matter how many times you've done that, how long you've been doing something for, how old you are. That will always carry some level of fear, right? Yes, I don't care who you are. I use these examples often. I think of like the Tony Robbins and the Oprahs. These people are masters at what they do. And also I would imagine when they're venturing out on the next big thing, the next unknown, sure, they have tools to coach themselves, but I would imagine that some inkling of fear is present. Anyway, these 2 women, wildly successful, with a microphone in their hand and a group of women listening to them so intently and so eagerly, saying that they've built the success and they don't actually know what's next. And that feels scary. And they don't really know what they want. And this experience of the higher you go and the higher you go and the higher you go, the scarier that is. It's not necessarily, again, I'm not here to freak anybody out, but those conversations brought me so much peace. And it made me realize I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not broken. I'm not different. I'm not alone. I'm not some like fringe category. I'm having a very human experience. And this experience is happening for other women who I love and admire so much. And so part of the bigger piece when we're talking about what's inspiring me right now, honestly, it's people who have the courage to tell the truth. People who have the courage to tell the truth about what's real, about what's going on for them. In this case, these 2 women were talking about the truth about success and their journey. And maybe, what's that saying? Not all that's gold glitters. Not all that glitters is gold, kind of a scenario. And I found the truth about success really inspiring, but more than anything, people who are willing to tell the truth, people who are willing to let you in and not necessarily only show you their highlight reel. And I want to say for a long time, I was the person who only wanted to show the highlight reel, not for any other reason other than I feel like there's a lot of doom and gloom out there. And so if I was going to put anything into the world, I wanted it to be happy and high vibe and fun and positive. And a lot of my content is, and if that's primarily your content, I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong. I'm not saying you should do anything different, but I do think that over the last probably like 12 to 24 months, I've let people in a little bit more, and it's had my content, my brand, how people experience me be a little more real, a little more holistic. And I'm grateful for that. And that takes a lot of courage to share the not so fun, the not so pretty. But because I've been so deeply inspired by women who are not afraid to tell the truth, I want to be in that category. I decided that I was going to put myself in that category. And if you've been hanging around listening to the podcast for any length of time, then welcome. You have a front row seat to my truth telling. There's a lot that, I don't hold much back here. The last thing that I feel really deeply, I'm inspired by bajillions of things, but the last thing for the sake of the podcast is I'm so inspired by people who have the courage to make changes and who are able to pivot when they're out of misalignment or when they don't like something or when something's not working. I talked about this in the plant medicine ceremony podcast episode. If you listen to that, going into the ceremony, I had reached behind me and I had tightened my hands and I said how I have a tendency to have a death grip on the past, on my old ways of being, on my comfort zone, as much as I love to try new things. And there are some ways that I'm really good at getting out of my comfort zone, but there's other times where I really struggle with change. And I think that that's a part of the human condition. I think change and the unknown can be scary. But when I say I struggle with change, I mean like to the depths of my soul. I will go kicking and screaming, digging my heels in before I make any sort of change. When you're going through the certification to become a master practitioner of NLP, there's something known as advanced parts integration. And in order to know how to serve somebody, you ask somebody, are you best at starting things, stopping things, or changing things? I'm really good at starting things. Really good at starting things. I'm horrible at stopping and changing things. I have a tendency to linger in places and spaces far beyond them being helpful and supportive. Like I will hang out in roles and in relationships and in circumstances like years past their expiration date. And I don't love that for me. I'll get intuitive downloads. I'm really good most of the time at listening to my intuition. When it tells me to start things, I'm so bad. But when it comes to ending something or making a change, especially a big change, I will bury my head so far in the sand. I don't love this. This is me telling the truth, guys. This is me being honest. And so for that reason, I feel so inspired when I see people say, hey, I was doing this and now I'm doing this, or I was doing this thing and it wasn't working. Especially when they're able to do that relatively quickly and in real time. I feel like there's a caveat here. There's a middle ground. There's something really important about staying power. I also don't want to negate from that. Staying power is not jumping ship when things get hard, is knowing that anything worthwhile is going to be a little bit of a roller coaster from time to time. Are you willing to stay on the ride? Okay. So there's something about I will stay on the ride. I will be the last one on the ride. You can count on that. But I think there's also a happy medium between staying power and recognizing when something has expired. When the ride stops, you're not supposed to go on it again. You're supposed to get off of it, unbuckle, step off, go find a new ride. And so I am really inspired by people who do that. So I think that's it today. Again, there's a bajillion things that I'm inspired by, but there are a few of the places I went to, the concert recently, women who I've heard speaking, and then the way that I see people showing up. And I think to myself, I love that. I want more of that. I've never thought of that. What would it be like if I could tap into that? And I wanted to share some of that with you today because I have a feeling that you'll probably be inspired by the same things, the people, the ways of being that I'm also inspired by. So I love this as always. If there was something that really stood out to you today, can I just tell you, I obsess over your DMs. When you listen to a podcast episode and then you send me a message like freaking out, you're like, Dani, I felt that same thing, or I had this thought or this experience when I heard you share this. I live for that. That is a new love language. Okay. My love language is when you listen to a podcast episode and you tell me how it impacted you. Nothing brings me more joy than that. So please feel free to send me messages. Let me know what came up for you. And we'll see you on the next one. I love you so much.